when it's all said and done, I think Blue Lock's going to be my favorite manga of all time. Let's break that down. Everyone, Bruce, Divergent Anime here. Laundry Room Bruce, Monkey D. Gucci, world's #1 striker. You know what it is. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm glad you clicked on this video because if you haven't read Blue Lock, first of all, do yourself a favor, you should. But if you're not entirely convinced or you want to know why I made this video, stick around. I hope you'll enjoy. I think that Blue Lock is the culmination or the evolution, whatever you want to call it that way, the next step in sports manga. It is sort of the twisted, it's not a deconstruction, I don't know if that's the right word I'm using, of sports manga. And I'm going to get into that, but I think it's a must read, and I think when it is all said and done, when it's finished, especially if it has even a good anime, let alone a very good or a great one, if it has a good anime and it finishes and it like it's going and the quality keeps up in the manga, I think it'll go down as, for at least for me, it'll be my favorite manga, if not my favorite sports manga. But I think to a lot of people, it'll be the best sports manga they've ever read. And I know we have greats like Slam Dunk, Hajime no Ippo, if you count that. Haikyuu, especially, is the king right now. I understand. I love me some Kuroko no Basket myself. I know it's not for everyone, but there's a lot of really good sports manga out there. Shita no Joe from way back in the day. There's tons, but I think it'll end up being the best for several reasons. Number one, and we're gonna get into this. First of all, the art style. Like, if just, I'm gonna put some panels up real quick. I'm worried about copyright strikes, guys, but I gotta show you this art. This art is it is just so clean. It's so harsh, but the shadowing and just the intensity of it screams through. Just how it's drawn, you feel these characters. You feel how they're doing. You sense their urgency, their emotion, their dread, their excitement. It can't be understated how great this art is and how much of this pairing between, if you don't know anything about Blue Lock, or you just found out about it because of this video, this series is written by an author and drawn by a separate artist. So there's two people kind of collaborating to make the manga. So there isn't a single mangaka. So the artist can kind of take care of the work that the writer, puts the story forth, which is a great story. And the artist just has to worry about, presenting how the characters feel and their weight, which is sometimes tough as a single mangaka, because you have to worry about how you're presenting your story and whether or not you have the artist chops to kind of back that up. It's tough for a lot of mangaka. But I like that this manga found its way through a collaborative effort, because the artwork it's very heavy on expression, the emotion that these football players make. And without that, I think it would suffer greatly. Some people have questioned whether or not it'll be able to animate well because of how intense the art is, how kind of deformed and all over the place the expressions can be sometimes. But I don't think that'll be a problem. I know some anime take liberty with how they adapt the story. But if we're just talking in terms of manga, this manga has some of the best art I've ever seen. One, I'll stake on that. And two, it's definitely my favorite art in any sports manga. I will say, I know we got our Slam Dunks, I know we got our Haikyuus, but man, I just love the art in Blue Lock, and I can't understate how great it is. And I hope if you've seen some of these panels I put up, I hope it interests you in reading the story, because just for the art alone, you should check it out. But number two, Blue Lock is a series that I like that the main character. We'll start kind of with the characters step by step, but first off, the main character, Isagi Yoichi. He is someone who is not weak. I don't really like weak main characters, especially in sports manga. Other times it's okay, I guess. Hitman Reborn, if you like that. It kind of threw me off, him being so weak, but like Yowamushi Pedal, right? That is another sports manga I really like. The character is a weak MC. That is a genre of manga some people like. Isagi he's not weak mentally, but he might be lacking in some physical aspects of his soccer and technique-wise, right? He might be lacking as a football player, but that happens, right? That's the point of the manga. But at no point is he someone who says he's trash. He's not always apologizing. He's not one to back down from how he's feeling or not express how he's feeling. And I know this is weird, but for a shonen manga, I just like that they curse. I know that's odd. I know that's a weird kind of compliment to a manga, but it really feels like they're all their age. I know their bodies can sometimes be like, well, man, that's how a teenager looks, but it's manga. You know, that happens. Nobody's gonna look really their age in the manga, but I think they talk and act their age. You know, a frustrated athlete, normally, let alone a teenager, would curse and kind of express their frustration in sort of a way that isn't very clean, or not even cursing, but just how they talk. You know, it's very just rough. Like, damn it, I should have got that. I'll get it next. Like, it's just very like to the point, and I just think the dialogue and the on top of the characters is good. But in terms of the main character Isagi, I think a lot of fans really like him because he kind of he's the middle ground, and this is where Blue Lock comes in with kind of the crystallization or the evolution of sports manga, because while being he is not a genius in the sense that he is not like the other characters that we see and meet in the series that we meet down the line. Someone like Nagi, you know, for example, for the fans, he's not a genius like Nagi, at least right now. He's someone he doesn't lack talent, but he's not a genius, and I think that's a good middle ground. It's a great place for fans and people who read the series, I think, get into it because they can root for him, but he's not, again, a weak MC who kind of like lazes around, gets down about himself too much, and complains. And it's not just we're not on a jury to see him get from starting point to a regular high school football player. He's a regular high school football player going to superstar, or at least the level of genius is, or like the pushing the boundaries of what he can be. So that's very interesting. Number 3, or I guess 2A, the characters are great. If you're wondering, if you want a manga that has excellent characters, both visually, they're all distinct, great play styles, I really love the evolutions and growth from these athletes in this manga, because sometimes, a lot of the times, I've read plenty of sports manga, sometimes, most of the time, your evolution as an athlete in these manga is you need to let go and you need to trust those around you. That's a large, and or believe in yourself. Those are the two things. It's just believe in yourself. You know you got it inside you. Get over some trauma you had in your past. I love stuff like B Blues. Like, I'm not talking about injury history. That's interesting. That's an interesting read. I love B Blues, but get over yourself or get over a past trauma or something, or you're just somebody who you need to learn how to like play with teammates. Basically, that's what I'm getting at. You're somebody who needs to accept your senpai, and there's a lot of senpai this, and for my teammates, I'll carry their dreams, and yada 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 yada. I love sports manga. I love the tropes. Don't get me wrong, but as somebody who's read a lot of sports manga, it gets tiresome. And Blue Lock is such a fresh breath of fresh air for readers and fans of manga, not let alone sports manga, because it kind of flips the script and gives us characters that have gone through their regular shonen arc. And this is part 2B. I know I'm flipping around. Maybe 2C, main characters and how the characters grow. Blue Lock sets itself up immediately with the fact that we see a lot of these characters already coming into the story. They're coming into Blue Lock itself, the facility, as players who have already been in high school football and have been there and done that. They've already been through nationals. They've already won in club teams. They've already done the whole shebang. They've arced out in terms of, I'm taking my team to nationals and all my friends. They've arced out of that. They're at the end of that. Now, not all of them are fully fledged footballers, but they have all done. The manga kind of does away with the whole let's go to nationals kind of, let's do it for my senpai kind of trope. It pushes it away. And this gets me to my third point, why you need to read this series, why it is a must read, right? This video is about why it is a must read. And it is an evolution in sports manga because it immediately in the first chapter is one of the best first chapters I've ever read, because it immediately, sorry for the cursing, shits all over other sports manga tropes. It completely wipes out any meaning, or I guess any weight in something like going to nationals. We see, and this is first chapter, I'm not spoiling much, this is first chapter. You find Isagi in the first chapter about to take his teams to nationals, and he messes up, and he's not, he's crying, he's upset, and we kind of see it. This is the first chapter, so he's upset. He's at the end of his let's go to nationals. This is it. And when he gets to the Blue Lock facility with all the other people kind of just starting in the main lobby area, Ego Jinpachi, the kind of overseer of the Blue Lock facility in this manga, basically tells him that's lame. Is that good? That's stupid. Not is it stupid, but it's just, is that all you're worth? Is that all you strive for? If you want to be, the reason why Japan, and this manga really is, it sets itself up as a story about why Japan can't win the World Cup. I don't know if the author has some axe to grind with, the Japanese Football Association, but it sets itself up as kind of a counter to current Japanese football in the sense that it says, and I really think the author is making a statement about sports manga and saying, if people say they want to be the best in the world all the time. Everyone says they want to be number one. But that doesn't really mean anything if your story, especially if mangas end, right when somebody's like, I'm going to be the best, I'm going to take my team to Koshin, and sometimes they get there and like they have a really good match, but like they lose the next round. It's like a little footnote, like at the last chapter in the series, it's like, how Slam Dunk ended. And I know some people really love that ending. I loved that ending. I loved the chapter. I'm sure to say I loved those chapters kind of leading up in the finish of that match, Slam Dunk, for example. But really, Koshin, or just getting to the quote enter high to Anu no Sora, that is another basketball sports manga. It things like that, Blue Lock kind of spits on and says, no, this manga is about people who want to be the number one striker in the world. That doesn't mean going to Japanese nationals. That doesn't mean going to the Inter High. That does not mean bringing your senpai and your teammates and the friends you made along the way to nationals. It means facing the world, getting to the World Cup, and winning. And the stakes are immediately skyrocketed because he says if you can't make it through Blue Lock, if you accept into Blue Lock, once you've accepted, if you lose, you can't join the Japanese World Cup team. Now, yeah, some players, I guess, could, go some other way and join a different country's World Cup team, probably. But just I need you to think about that. This manga immediately takes the goal of most, if not all, sports manga and throws it in the garbage, tosses it over its shoulder, and says, here's what you're really after. You're all arced out. Here's a new arc and how you need to transition from regular footballers into the domain of geniuses and monsters. And I think why that's so good in terms of how it deconstructs and then rebuilds sports manga tropes is that almost every main character, or at least every central character in this manga, I should say, not main, but central character that we spend time with and get backstories on, it could be a main character in any other manga. Take Nagi, for the fans read, Nagi, Baro, Bachira, Rio, any of them. Take any of them and put them in another manga by themselves, maybe with like one other character, maybe like Rio Nagi. Rio Nagi could be a sports manga. It could just be them like learning to coexist and Nagi experiencing his losing frustration finally and then rebuilding from that, and that just be one manga. But what this does, Blue Lock does, it takes all those possible main characters and squishes them together in one scenario. And that's another reason why Blue Lock is amazing, is because the premise, right? Reason number 4. The premise is that you're in and it's far-fetched, but bear with me, it's manga. You're in a facility in which you eat, breathe, sleep, and do football. There's nothing else. And in that situation, the characters are treated roughly, and they are treated almost with contempt, but Ego is very much compounding his philosophy about football into them. And to explain the premise as much as I can, 300 high school footballers are selected to the Blue Lock facility. It is a facility in which Ego Jinpachi, who is now in charge of the Japanese Football Association kind of youth program, he promises to make the best striker in the world out of Japan, or at least Japan's best striker. And he takes 300 kids, basically, shoves them in a facility, and comes up with all sorts of wacky, just out-of-this-world scenarios in which they play, not necessarily out-of-this-world scenarios, but that he comes up with ways just to just survival of the fittest until one person stands above all others as the number one striker. He does this with 11-on-11 matches. He does this with 5-on-5s, 3-on-3s. He has a rule. Just I don't want to spoil too much because would like this to attract new readers if possible. But understand that this manga, the premise, is unlike any other I've ever read, especially in sports manga. There's no, like I said, there's no nationals, there's no senpai, there's no teammates, there's no single person kind of, it's not like Prince of Tennis or anything like that where it's a single sport, but they're still on a team. Your team could change at any minute. Your allies and enemies can change at almost any minute. Reason number 5 why Blue Lock is a must read is because its core message about ego, about selfishness, about how you need to listen to your inner voice and ignore kind of outside distractions, which is just one way of looking at it, is such a fresh take in storytelling, especially with sports. We usually see, like I mentioned with characters, usually their story arc is that they need to rely on others. They need to trust in others, right? This manga flips that around and says, no, the reason why these footballers in Japan, that this is Ego Jinpachi talking, in the story says they're so bad because they're like, oh, it's good to fit into a structure, right? Hierarchy is good, structure is good, working as a team is good. I don't want to stand out, so their strikers are real bad. And he says, no, excuse me, yes, that's why they're bad. So, in order to counteract that, I need to make them selfish and as egoist as possible. He needs to make them as close to someone who is a ball hog in any other sports, really someone who is in tune with their own kind of instinct and reflexes as possible. And a good example of this, and I want to use this as an example, just one, that's to show character progression and how Blue Lock uses ego, is Baro Shohei. Baro is a character we're introduced pretty early on in the manga. He has a distinct look, he's built, and he has a distinct weapon, and a distinct way of playing football. He refers to himself as the king. He is very selfish off the bat, and he's really talented at football. So it'd be interesting to see how, or at least you'd be thinking, how does he kind of progress? You said this is all about ego, this is all about being selfish. He's already that. That's right. So how does someone who is selfish and thinks of themselves as high and mighty like that, who doesn't want to pass, kind of like a Mana Daiki if you watch Kuroko no Basket, how does someone like that grow in Blue Lock? Wouldn't they automatically be the greatest at that point? No. Because Baro does lose at a certain point. And his evolution comes not in the way of thinking, I should pass, I should change, I should rely on my teammates, I should work together. No. Hell no. He says he needs to be more selfish. He needs even more ego to survive. And he does this because he develops a weapon in the spur of a moment. It's called a chop dribble. I won't give too much away, but he develops a new dribble in the middle of a match because he realizes if he doesn't get stronger and if he doesn't develop the strength to stand on his own as a footballer, his dreams will end. He is faced with the crisis of the fact that he betraying who he is, betraying that king mentality to him is the same as death. So he literally, to his own mind, is faced with life or death. And the way he escapes death is he develops a new strength to stand on his own in the form of a dribble. And he becomes more selfish, more of an egoist. And this works because he has the ability to, one, stand on his own. So he, in the realistic sense of the manga, he can continue to play football and win. But it also works because Ego, the character in the manga, have been setting us up to accept that this is how you would want something to react in this system. You wouldn't want them to just give up and betray themselves. It's very in line with how he thinks this whole time, how he's thought this whole time, and how Blue Lock has presented its story. And it's interesting, after that moment I just mentioned, he actually, I think, became more of a fan favorite because of it, because he did open up in a sense that he became more self-aware and kind of a little more talkative in the sense that he just didn't, well, he still says, I'm going to say stuff like, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill these guys. He's that type. He talks like that. But there are softer moments of him. So off the pitch, he becomes more self-aware. But on the pitch, the field, whatever you want to call it, he develops a new weapon to stand and become the best striker because he doesn't want to give up that part of himself. He does not want it's the same as dying to him if he says I have to rely on somebody else. I'm no longer the king. And that's just amazing to me because it makes perfect sense in the story of Blue Lock. It just rolls perfectly. You got to read it really to understand it, but he's just one of the character examples of someone who goes through a progression, right, of a regular footballer to a monster, to a genius. And to do that, it's not going along with your senpais, doing some crazy training in the mountains, not going Super Saiyan. Not that, well, okay, Kuroko no Basket. I was just about to say not sports manga, but Kuroko no Basket did. But it's none of that. It's developing a new weapon, a new strength in your own game that allows you to continue on and win. And this is put excellently by Ego to the Japanese Football Association. He asks, "What is talent?" And so people give some answers, he gives some fake answers, and he says this: talent is the ability to prove one's strength. That's all. And that's the beauty of Blue Lock. It's not just the great art. It's not just the great MC. It's not just the great premise. It's not just the great characters. It's that by its own logic, it follows its own rules and gives us a compelling story and shows that at the end of the day, to really be the number one striker, to be the best in the world, to really succeed at sports, whether we want to run from it, hide from it, destiny arrives. To be strong in the sports world and in life, you need strength to stand on your own. And Blue Lock doesn't run from that. And that's why you must read Blue Lock. Because I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be the best ever at the end of it. Thank you for watching, guys. Later.